Again, thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in just a minute. We're just waiting for the Facebook technology to kick in. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm afraid we're going to have to all rack this up to just another few minutes we've wasted on Facebook over our lifetimes. Okay, it looks like we are ready to go. The webinar is being recorded and is streaming to Facebook. Thank you very much for joining the Rusesabagina family this morning for our press conference to talk about the kidnapping of Paul Rusesabagina. This is a very sad anniversary, a one-year anniversary of his kidnapping, and the family is here to talk to you today about how that feels and how they are coping. I'm going to turn it over to Professor Brian Endless to get us started this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And again, sorry, one more thing at the end of the press conference, if there are any questions from journalists, there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in the Q&A function and we'll come back to them at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitty, and thank you to everyone who's here for joining us today. As Kitty mentioned, my name is Brian Endless. I'm the Director of African Studies at Loyola University in Chicago. I've also been a longtime friend and colleague of Paul Rusesabagina and of the Rusesabagina family. It's a sad honor to be here today. Paul has now been in prison for 1 year. It was 1 year and 4 days ago that Paul disappeared, and the family had no idea where he was. He does a check-in call every day that he's traveling, and the check-in call stopped. What we now know is Paul was kidnapped by the Rwandan government. He was lured from his home in San Antonio through Dubai and lured onto a plane that he thought was going to Burundi, but ended up in Rwanda. Paul spent the first 4 days in a Rwandan hidden house where he was tortured. He called it an abattoir or a slaughterhouse. Since then, Paul spent 250 days in solitary confinement, and he has been in one of the worst prison systems in the world. Since February, Paul has been subjected to a show trial. The verdict is expected on September 20th, and everyone on this call and all of Paul's team and supporters knows that he's going to be found guilty, and he's going to get what is effectively a life sentence. 1 year ago, the world was questioning whether Paul was a quote unquote terrorist because the Rwandan government said he was. His family and team knew that could not be true. Paul is a humanitarian who works for truth and reconciliation in his home country of Rwanda, in the region and around the world. He criticizes the human rights abuses of one of the most abusive governments on the planet. Paul is nonviolent. That scene of him refusing to pick up a gun in Hotel Rwanda is completely accurate. He uses his words to solve conflict and knows the absolute value of words for good and for evil. So what really happened? Paul was captured, kidnapped by a regime that had harassed and attacked him for years, all because he was an extremely loud critic of the Rwandan government. Paul Kagame's government does not allow dissent. Recently, we've seen articles about Vladimir Putin's government in Russia. And if you're a dissenter, you can choose between exile and prison. There is no such choice in Rwanda. The question is not exile. The question is prison or death in Rwanda. Paul Rusesabagina was a dissenter. He was outside of the country, and he was captured and brought back in. A year ago, that dictator kidnapped the humanitarian, put him on trial on completely false charges. And this is the type of trial that happens in Rwanda all too often before Paul was captured, now many times since. The past year and Paul's trial has shown this. There was no terrorism. There were only 2 witnesses presented during the trial who were not Paul's co-accused, and they did not even talk about the attacks, only about a history of past false charges. Paul's co-accused, most of whom signed statements of guilt, did not implicate Paul in any of the crimes when they were on the stand. And in many cases, they stated that their testimony was under duress. Paul himself was forced to give a statement after 4 days of torture, but he quickly denied it in his first days in court. Independent trial analysis has confirmed there is no fair trial here, and there never was and never was going to be. It was clear from the first 4 days, no fair trial starts with kidnapping and torture. Paul is in prison as a punishment for being a critic of President Kagame and as a warning to others of what could happen to them. I said it's a sad honor at the beginning because this situation has also been an honor. Paul has been my friend for almost 15 years, and I met his family, many times over those years. His wife, Tatiana, and I have become friends, and I've known his youngest children since they were teens. It has been an enormous honor to work with them, all of them, over the past year, as we spend every day trying to find new ways to keep their father's name in the news, to keep him alive, and eventually to get him released. People sometimes say in times like this, that's a tireless campaign, but that's not true. It's tiring. It is hard. We have spent many very late nights in Belgium and early mornings in the United States. There have been many tears during the especially difficult times. But Paul's family is taking his example. They have persevered. They will not give up, because we all know that whatever we are going through, what Paul faces every minute is worse. Paul's children have stepped up in amazing ways, and I've seen them grow as they take up their father's cause. They're with us today, along with his wife, to talk about that cause. They are his voice for the voiceless. They are taking the lead with the US and Belgian governments at press events, in seeking allies, and in public interviews, all in an effort to bring their father home. If you were kidnapped, you could not ask for a better model family to have on your side. I'd now like to briefly introduce the family, and as opposed to making statements, I'm just going to have a discussion with them as if we are around the dinner table. It's been 1 year. This is an incredibly hard day for all of us to move forward. Paul's family, and the 3 people in the picture to the far right is his wife Tatiana. In the center is Anais, and on the far left is Karine. Karine is the youngest daughter. Anais is the 3rd youngest. We have Trésor Rusesabagina, who is the 2nd youngest child, and Lise Rusesabagina, who is Paul's oldest child. Dion Rusesabagina has also joined us, the 3rd oldest, and we hope Roger will be here to join us soon too. To the family, thank you very much for joining us at this press conference today. We want to let the world know your perspective on Dad as we hit this 1 year point. Lise, I'm going to start with you. We were talking a little bit before this call. I think Lise and Dion will probably speak in French, and we'll have translation for them. Lise, how are you feeling today? It's a very hard day for the family.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think I'll speak in French, it's better for me. En fait, aujourd'hui, c'est une journée assez bizarre. Je me remémore tout ce qui s'est passé l'année passée à cette date, et j'ai dû revivre tout ce que j'ai vécu l'année passée à ce jour, et je me sens très mal.
So Lee says today is a very weird day as she's remembering everything that happened at this specific date last year, and reliving everything, and it's been difficult because of the graphic memories, the difficulties of that time, and we're reliving it, and she's reliving it today.
Thank you, Lise. Tracer, maybe you can say a little bit more on that, not just about today, but how tough has this year been? How has it affected your life, and what have your thoughts been as we get to 1 year now?
So first of all, thank you, Brian, for hosting this. Hey, brothers and sisters. Hey, Mom. This year's been definitely the toughest year of my entire life, and I can pretty much speak for the entire family when I say that. It's been our toughest year. We've, for lack of a better word, we've lost a father. We're losing him. It feels like at times, and to me, at least, it feels like I'm missing an arm or a leg. And sometimes it's hard to wake up in the morning and have to walk when you feel like you don't have a leg, So it's been incredibly tough. And a lot of the times I think about my dad and like what he used to say about people and about kindness and how he believes in people. He always believed in people. He used to say like one of the individual's most potent weapon is the belief that, in common decency, the belief that people altogether can be good. And it's kind of hard because as a family, we have to rely on people. We have to rely on people because we have, just like our dad, we feel like we're stuck, just like him. But we have to rely on people, and people have been really good. And we have had a lot of support, but I also feel like there have been people, some of the most powerful people out there who could do more, who know who my dad is, who know what he's done, who have seen the movie but forget about the movie. You know the man, and you know he'd do the same thing again if he could. And those same powerful people, to me, aren't doing enough. So it's tough as the son of a man who is innocently tied up, tortured, to sit and look at people who can do more not do enough. I want to call out names, but I'd rather not. So I'm just going to say this year has been incredibly tough. My hope in people is alive and well because I've seen all the support and all the love, but I also know that there are people out there who could be a little bit braver, could be a little more courageous and a little more selfless. And I'm just going to stay hopeful that they will show up.
Thank you very much, Tracer. And maybe we'll talk about those people a little bit more and name some names as we come through and try to be constructive and ask what we need people to do. Tatiana, you have been a rock for the family. You have been incredibly strong. And I also know this has been hardest on you because you and Paul have made your lives together. What are your main concerns right now? What do you think of daily when you think of Paul?
Thank you, Brian, for this question. It is difficult to respond to this question. It is difficult for me because Paul, my husband, is my best friend, my confidant. My concern today is his health, his detention. It has been now 369 days, day by day, since my husband has been kidnapped, tortured, and illegally detained by the government of Rwanda. I want to ask all people and to thank them that they have been helped us and they continue to help us in this difficult moment. And I want to thank all countries that has helped us, has supported us in this difficult moment. And especially, I want to thank Belgium and the US, because my husband, if he's now there, if you could hear him, it's because of their vigilance. I take this advantage to ask them to intensify and to use daily possible to bring my husband home. You see those children here, they are all sad. They need their parent, they need their dad, and I need him, I miss him.
Thank you, Tatiana. Anais, mom just talked about concerns for dad's health. Could you give a little bit more detail on that, and how is his health, and what are the family's main concerns right now?
Hi, Brian. Thank you also for this question. And I also want to thank you for being part of this journey with us, this journey that none of us wish to be on, but we haven't been alone. Just to echo Tresor's words, we need people. We cannot do this alone. And you, Kitty, and Kevin, and many others, and Amber have been our rocks also throughout this period. And so I just want to really echo that at the beginning, because it's a journey that we're all on this together.
We're not happy to be here, but we're honored to be here.
But so going to specifically to your question on dad's health and following up on mom, dad, was tortured the first 3 days he was there. After that, they denied him of his medication, his hypertension medication. So for the last almost 365 days, 69 days, he has not received his hypertension medication. My father is also a cancer survivor. He hasn't had a checkup in the last 2 years. We are living in a pandemic today, where we see every single day people dying because of COVID, because of this virus. And all that combined, his health is our biggest concern, because we think of all these things that could be very dangerous. And we need to be able to we need to keep him alive. Our work cannot be done without him and being in good health, and not without him alive. What we've seen in the last year is that the Rwandan authorities are trying to do everything in their possibility to make dad's health more difficult by not giving his medication, and not being able to get his real checkup. All of this because he's illegally detained. And so our worry would be so much better if we can we'll be relieved, I would say, if our father can come back to us, can get his checkups, can get his cancer checkups, but also can get his medication. And we can also see him and hug him. And so, yes, so his health has been our biggest concern, and still will be our biggest concern following in this year. And all because, the Rwandan authorities are holding him illegally, detaining him illegally, and he needs to come back to us.
And it's the big things and the little things too. When we think about physical health, Karine, maybe you can comment on mental health. For instance, he was in solitary confinement for 250 days, and now he's not, but it's still an issue for mental health. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Brian. And I also echo, and I'm sure the your family echoes our thanks to you and Kitty and Brian and Kevin and Amber for all of the kindness of the work that you're doing to help bring that home. About mental health, first on the 27th of August, our father disappeared. He disappeared. That means we did not know where he was. We did not know how he was. We did not know if he was breathing, if he was alive. We did not know anything. On the 31st of August, he reappeared and was paraded in front of the media. Those first 4 days, as Anais mentioned, he was being tortured, physically tortured. And that in itself also has a mental impact on him. And after this, he was denied his legal rights, and then he was held in solitary confinement for 260 days. This is a violation of the UN Nelson Mandela rule, which was put in place in order to limit this type of torture, because this is psychological torture. Leaving someone in a room by themselves, without windows, without light, without anyone to speak to for 260 days is really impactful on an individual and can really hurt a person's psychological health. And so after having gone through that, after having been tortured physically, after having been tortured mentally and psychologically, he's still being denied his rights. And so we're very, very concerned about the long-term impact this will have on his health and his physical health and his mental health.
Thank you, Corinne. Diane, if I can go to you, maybe to talk a little bit about how the family in Belgium is doing, but also I know you've been working with many Rwandan friends in the diaspora, old friends and new friends, and how has the Rwandan community been responding to?
Merci,
Je vais répéter la question. Donc, est-ce que tu pourrais nous dire sur ce qui se passe en Belgique, sur la famille, la réaction de la famille, le sentiment de la famille, et aussi comment la communauté rwandaise a réagi sur ce qui s'est passé avec papa durant ces dernières années. Et on va traduire en anglais après aussi, si tu préfères, si tu veux.
Merci beaucoup, Brian. Et aussi les autres, Kevin et Kitty, tout le groupe, en fait, la team aussi, les avocats. Je remercie aussi la communauté rwandaise, évidemment. Je profite de l'occasion pour rappeler et aussi rappeler à quel point nous sommes, en fait, nous nous sentons très soutenus. Nous nous sentons aussi, suite à ce qui s'est passé, nous nous sentons non seulement soutenus, mais en même temps, pas vraiment abandonné, mais ça n'évolue pas comme on voudrait parce que notre papa n'est toujours pas là. On vient de passer une année jour pour jour, en fait, comme on est le 31 août 2021, comme ça fait une année jour pour jour que nous avons vu notre papa devant les médias et que nous sommes aussi bien choqués, la communauté aussi bien belge que la communauté, on va dire, d'origine rwandaise qui habite en Belgique est toujours là, ils nous soutiennent, ils sont là, mais ils se sentent à la fois impuissants, mais le fait d'avoir vu que notre papa a vécu ce qu'il a vécu, que notre famille, malgré qu'on fait tout ce qu'on peut, n'arrive pas à le faire venir en Belgique, ils se sentent aussi très, très engagés, ils commencent à parler plus. Les Rwandais, je veux dire, ils commencent à s'ouvrir plus et à se rendre compte qu'en fait, seul, on n'arriverait à rien et que aussi, ça peut leur arriver. Ça nous a choqués, nous, mais ça les a choqués eux aussi. Et ça fait qu'ils commencent à se dire, en fait, si Paul Rusesabagina peut avoir ce genre de traitement et aussi se retrouver dans une telle situation, ça veut dire que nous, en fait, on est totalement démunis. Ça veut dire qu'on doit aussi réagir et au plus vite.
So Diane is thanking everyone specifically everyone who supported us over this difficult year, specifically Kitty, Brian, and Amber, and Kevin, and also the wonderful legal team who's done a wonderful job over the last year, and also the Rwandan community. We feel so supported. We felt so supported over the year. We didn't feel abandoned, and it made us stay strong. However, there's still more work to be done. Our father is still in Rwanda. He's still detained there. Many people in Belgium have wanted to rise up and to help us. However, specifically the Rwandan community often feels powerless because how can you be a dictator who's oppressed people like this and who's kidnapped our father as well? But even though they feel powerless against this dictatorship, they do feel more engaged. Having seen my father's courage to stand up against the regime, against the injustice, having seen our family also standing up against injustice, has given them courage to get engaged, because they also realize that, you know, if this can happen to them, it can happen to us too. And you cannot do anything alone. And so from that perspective, people are helping us and they want to rise up. You know, in Rwanda, and what the president wanted to show is that if he can take our father, then other people, he can take other people anywhere else around the world. And that actually gets our Rwandan community to rise up and more engaged. Is actually, instead of being more scared. And so we've seen this over the year, and we're thanking them for all the supports. But she also did call on the Belgians to also do more, the Belgian community to do more as well, and to help our family.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dion. I want to ask a few more questions. I also want to remind those of you who have joined us, thank you again. We have the Q&A function at the bottom. I'll ask a few more questions and then we'll open it up to those of you who are here. If you have any additional questions for the family, pretty much on any subject dealing with Paul. Corinne, maybe you can talk a little bit about why this happened. Why do you think Kagame kidnapped your father?
So this happened for a few reasons, but what I think is at the core of this is President Paul Kagame does not allow any criticism, doesn't allow dissent. It is not a democracy as Rwanda is not a democracy as they try to make it out to be. There is no freedom in Rwanda. There's no freedom of expression, freedom of political participation, even access to education, access to health, access to things that are fundamental for the livelihoods of individuals. A lot of these things have been covered up or have been cleaned up through PR and through Kagame's push towards trying to hide under all these human rights abuses and shove them under the rug so that people don't realize the reality of the regime. Our father, Paul Rusesabagina, saved 1,268 lives during the genocide. He's a hero to many Rwandans and many people around the world. He used his platform, and in 2004, as everyone knows, Hotel Rwanda was released, and that portrayed his role during the genocide in saving the lives of those 1,268 people. These are people who now have families, who have kids, grandkids, children, aunts, neighbors, and because our father saved their lives, that they were able to expand their families. Kagame did not like this because he saw our father as a man who was respected in the Rwandan community, who was liked in the international community, and who was also receiving awards and attention from everyone who learned about his deeds during the Rwandan genocide. So after the Hotel Rwanda movie was released, our father used newly gained platform to bring attention to the human rights abuses being perpetrated by the Rwandan government. He felt that with that platform, with this attention, he had a responsibility to shed light on all of this and to help people who were being silenced and who are still being silenced until today by the Rwandan government. So Paul Kagame went after him immediately after the movie was released. He started smearing him in the media by printing lies about our father, by trying to discredit his role and his good deeds on the genocide and the lives that he saved. And then he accused him of completely made up charges. And this dates from 2005 and 2006, where he started making things up and trying in order to make our father lose credibility. And that's simply because our father was using his platform to bring attention to all the human rights abuses that Paul Kagame was committing, his government was committing, and that his PR teams were trying to hide. And that is why our father is currently in prison. That is why he was kidnapped. That is why he was tortured. It's because he was bringing the attention that Kagame did not want, the attention on the lives of the people who have been victims and destroyed by the Rwandan government and Paul Kagame.
Thank you, Corinne. Also, just want to clarify too, and Dion started talking about this a little bit. Anis, maybe you can talk for a few minutes about the fact that Dad's kidnapping and prison is not an isolated incident. This isn't something that only happened to him. Most people don't know Rwanda that well. Can you talk about that a little bit and about how this is part of the bigger picture?
Yes, and so, you know, there's this phenomenon some people have heard of, transnational repression, of dictatorship and other authoritarian government going beyond their national borders to go fight for, to go find dissidents and terrorize them. And this report from the Freedom House, actually entitled "This Transnational Repression," was published in January, that kind of describes this phenomenon that's happening, because our father is not an isolated case in Rwanda. Every dissident in Rwanda who dared to speak against Paul Kagame is either killed, jailed, disappeared, and we don't hear from them again. They don't have justice. They don't have any fairness. Nothing happened to them. So this is not an isolated case. And we've seen actually that over the year, there's a lot of mounting repression happening in Rwanda, where many of the dissidents are being disappeared, are being kidnapped from their home countries to go back to Rwanda and to also live through what my father is living today. We've been very lucky that our father had the platform that he had before, for us to be able to tell the world about this, what's happening in Rwanda. But the reality is that many thousands of Rwandans are victims of this regime, and thousands of Rwandans are living the same thing that my father is living. And that's why our struggle is for him, but also other Rwandans want to join it, because if it's not them today, it could be them tomorrow. Today it's my father, it could even be all of us. And so we have to be very careful. And actually would like to let Corinne speak a little bit in detail of some few examples that we would like to highlight of our other brothers and sisters from Rwanda who are also living this dire situation.
Yes, I would, to give a few examples, many people know of Yvonne Idamandye, who is a mother and a woman who gave YouTube videos, who published YouTube videos where she was calling out the injustice and the abuses of this government, asking for change in Rwanda, asking for the government to care about the people of Rwanda. And she was imprisoned and is still in prison today. Another example is Aimable Karasira. He's a man who lost almost his entire family during the genocide, and he has been a victim of this government throughout his entire life. And he has spoken up about being a victim of this government. And of course, he's now sitting in prison. Another example, and this is a case of a man who has disappeared, is Ben Rutabana. He's a father, a husband, a musician, and a friend to our family as well. And he just disappeared. He was advocating for the human rights and for change in Rwanda and for democracy. He disappeared. His family doesn't know where he is. His wife doesn't know where he is. His children don't know where he is. All they know is that the Rwandan government took him away, and living every single day, going to bed every single day, knowing that your father or your husband or your brother is somewhere being hurt, tortured, or even maybe already dead, is super, super painful to anyone dealing with that. And these are just 3 examples of the many, many other people who are facing this.
Yeah, the terrible truth in Rwanda that very few realize is this repression is extreme and has been going on since the genocide ended in 1994 with the new government. Just this past year, Human Rights Watch and Freedom House have both reported on transnational repression and have put reports out. And in addition, there are over almost 300 people over the past year who have been killed by the Rwandan government in extrajudicial killings. Kitty, did you want to add something in here?
Brian, if you recall, the first event that we ever did with Paul Rusesabagina was a town hall meeting to talk about Rwanda and Burundi at the Rainbow Push Coalition with Reverend Jesse Jackson. We were joined there by Ambassador Robert Kruger, the former United States ambassador to Burundi, and Ambassador Robert Flatten, the former US ambassador to Rwanda. At the last minute, Ambassador James Kamonyo, the former Rwandan ambassador to the United States, inserted himself into the program. At that meeting, we had Rwandan refugees in the United States able for the first time to ask a Rwandan government official, what happened to their brother? What happened to their mother? Why were these people disappeared? They felt so empowered to be able to ask these questions in a safe space to the Rwandan government. Unfortunately, they got no answers. That was 2007. We're still looking for answers. In 2007, at that event, the Rwandan ambassador to the United States accused Paul Rusesabagina, Robert Flatten, and Ambassador Robert Flatten and Ambassador Robert Kruger of paying for and sending money to rebels. It was a false accusation then. It is the same false accusation today that Paul is in jail for. One of the reasons he's in jail is that the United States government has allowed Paul Kagame to get away with telling lies about what's happening in Rwanda. That's gotta stop. In order to really help the Rwandans be free, we need to put some obstacles in front of Paul Kagame. We need to stop giving him United States money. We need to stop giving him money from the EU. If he's going to continue to lie and repress his people, we have to stop being complicit. Yesterday, we had a press conference in front of the Rwandan embassy. We had a press conference to talk about Paul Rusesabagina and his arrest, but just as importantly, we had a press conference to talk about all of the other people who have died, who have disappeared, or who have been detained just in the months and now the year that Paul Rusesabagina has been detained. Where are all those other Rwandans? Why? What's happened to them? And most importantly, why is the United States and the EU continuing to give money to support this repression and these killings?
Thank you, Kitty. And that actually takes us into the last couple of questions that I want to ask of the family. Karine and Anais have really been the people who've taken the lead with the Belgian government, Karine, and the US government, Anais. And maybe I can ask you both very briefly, and I'm going to throw in a question for Trésor here too. Karine, you've met with Belgian Foreign Minister Sophie Wilmès. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to again. If she were here right now today, what would you ask her and the Belgian government to do?
If Minister Sophie Wilmès was here, we had even a few more minutes with her. We would remind her of the principles of which Belgium lives by, about justice and equality and human rights. And the reason Belgium's decision to engage in promoting and protecting those principles, these are being violated for one of your citizens that is being tortured and illegally detained in Rwanda. Rwanda has shown no intention, no goodwill in being in the cooperation that is happening between the two countries. And perhaps it's time to increase the pressure. It's time to not only demand his immediate release in the same way that the Minister Sophie Wilmès asked for the immediate release of Alexei Navalny, the Russian who was kidnapped and imprisoned by Vladimir Putin, or Roman who was kidnapped in Belarus. So we ask Sophie Wilmès to stand up for her citizen and ask for his immediate release and put enough pressure on Kagame, and for Belgium to put enough pressure on Rwanda in order for them to release their citizen.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Anais to kind of cover the technical parts, but Trésor, you didn't want to use a name before. You didn't want to talk about someone, but you know what? When I'm talking to people about your dad's situation, the number one thing they ask me is, why isn't the US government doing more? Dad's a permanent resident of the United States who won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If you had President Biden in the room for a moment, remembering he has Secret Service protection, things like that. But if you had President Biden in the room for a moment, what would you want to say to him?
To be honest, even if he had Secret Service around, I'd probably say this to him if I had the chance, regardless. I'd say, what are you doing? I know President Biden, I know you know what's going on. I know you know what's going on. And I didn't want to say anything because, to be honest, many people have helped us. We have had a lot of support, but some of the people who could really make a difference, like you, President Biden, where are you? I've watched you throughout the election. I've seen you. I've seen your speeches. I believe in this country. That's why I live here. I love it. I believe in the democracy that they say it represents. And you're the president of this country. This country gave my father the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's not nothing, right? It represents something. Your government gave that to him. He is one of your residents. You know what he's done. You know who he is. You know what he would do again and again. And so, President Biden, I'm not asking you to, this isn't something crazy that we're asking you to do. It's one man who needs your help. If you really are about democracy, if you really are a man of conviction, if you're a man of principle, show us that it's not all about politics, that it's not all about business, that it's not all about interests. Don't abandon my father. Please, President Joe Biden, show up for him, because he would have shown up for you. So.
Very well said, Trésor, and I think that people need to hear this perspective. Anais, would you like to say anything else of what you would say to the United States? You meet with the State Department on a regular basis, and they have been helpful, but we also know they could do more. What would you want to say today?
Yes, I think I would definitely say very similar things to what Trésor just talked about to President Biden. But like you said too, we have had the support of members of Congress, both bipartisan and bicameral. We have the support of the State Department today. However, our father is still not here. So that means more needs to be done. And that's why we would love to get them to encourage the United government to do more for us, to help us put pressure more on the president of Rwanda, Kagame. And what we've seen as the forefront of this administration is human rights. Human rights was a big part of the speeches that Trésor is mentioning. And so as a human rights defender, my father, and I know President Biden is a human rights defender, and I know the United States stand up for human rights as well too. And my father's rights have been violated from the beginning until now. And so from that light, I will also add to President Biden, walk the talk. Show us what you've said. Show us that you can bring human rights to the forefront of US foreign policy. Show us that you care about this by helping us bring our father back home.
Thank you, Anais, and thank you, everyone. Maybe I can take one last call to Anais and Karine, since you have been at the forefront in working with these governments. What can people who want to help do? Where should people go if an ordinary person wants to help your father right now?
So one thing that has worked so far, and I think that's the beauty of the love of people and kind of the kindness in people, is that it's been grassroots. It's been through our friends and families and people who don't know us, who called their congressmen, their senators, their representatives, and told them about our father's situation, our father's dire situation. And so from that perspective, I think that we can continue to do that. Right now, we have seen the trial happen, this illegal trial, this sham trial. I mean, we've seen all the injustices that have happened to my father. So we have a foundation, we have a package material to really present to these representatives, to the senators, to let them know, like, you asked for a fair trial and there was no fair trial. This man is about to be convicted for life and he's 67 years old. His health is not well. We need to get him back. And I think that everybody's voice toward their representative, it can help us. But we also are struggling. This is we have a legal team that's supporting my father in this difficult period. And even sometimes, to be able to continue this fight, the struggle, we need to have the finances to be able to help. And so another way for people to help us is through our legal defense fund as well. So we can pay our lawyers so they can help our father and continue working with us and bring our father back home. But I think, when my father always talked about it, do what you can. There's nothing that a person cannot do. People feel powerless, but we're not powerless. Our voice is a lot. Our father's voice is in prison right now. I mean, they've taken his voice away, but now anybody else that's not in prison can speak for him. Even going on social media, tweeting and putting on Instagram and Facebook about Dad's case, talking about Dad's case to your friends and to your colleagues, to your coworker. All of this will keep my father's name in the light, and we can think that, and if people speak about him every single day, then we have more chances to see him again. So there's so many ways that you can help us, and don't feel powerless at all. I think Karen can add a little bit. Oh, there's also, actually one other thing I would like to add is we have a petition actually, and the petition that we'd like to get more people. So that's another way to support our family, is through sharing this petition to all your friends, your contacts, your network. And in the hope that, President Biden can see this petition and other leaders in the world can see this petition in the United States and in Belgium. And lastly, we are sharing video messages on social media about my father. So if you have met my father, have heard of him, or would just love to share encouragement or anything to him, feel free to send us videos, and we can share the contacts and the details for how you can share them after, and email rusesabagina@gmail.com. But we also follow us on the Facebook, and you'll see a couple of other videos that people have shared in support of our father. But yeah, so there's no wrong way to help us. And right now we are here 1 year, still standing strong, still fighting for our father, because we're not alone, because we got the support of everyone. And so we're still so thankful for that. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here with us today. We have at least one question. If you have other questions, please put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. This question is from Tom Zollner. Who is the person who most needs to be lobbied in the US government, who can be contacted by an ordinary citizen?
Brian.
And Kitty, you've been working with our advocacy efforts along with Anais and our legal team. Maybe you could take that one.
I'd like to take that. And Tom, I'm sorry, but I'm going to give a very political answer. It's not just one person. People should contact Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. People should write to the White House. As Corinne and Anais mentioned, we have a petition. We've been working with the folks from No Business with Genocide. We have more than 7,000 people who have signed a petition to go to Anthony Blinken to ask him to intervene. But people really can make it local too. If you can write to your own congressman and tell Paul's story, if you need suggestions of what to write, let us know and we'll help you with a letter. Otherwise, all of the background information is on our website at hrrfoundation.com. Write to your congressman, write to your senator, write to the heads of the House and Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to Senator Robert Menendez from New Jersey, and to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to Karen Bass. We have a whole list of people who we can write to, and we'll update that on the website as well. But use your voice. In all the years that we worked with Paul, Paul always talks about being the voice for the voiceless. That's why he ended up in prison, because he was the voice for the voiceless. Now that they're trying to silence him, you and I and all of us, we have to use our voices to be the voice not only for Paul, but for all of the Rwandans who are facing political and repression, and who are facing danger from their own government. We need to be their voice. Thank you so much for tuning in and for helping out.
I'll echo that and say thank you all very much. We have run out of questions and also run out of time. I'd first like to thank the family for giving us your perspectives today. I know very personally how hard this is on this day in particular, but we are all thinking about it. I also want to thank the press for being here and the press who have covered this story. Paul will not survive if his story is not kept in the news. And we all know that. We know that to get someone out of the clutches of a dictatorship, especially when you're a dissident, their name has to be public knowledge. Their name has to be in the news. And the more pressure that we can put on the Kagame government, the more uncomfortable we can make it for them to keep Paul, the better Paul's chances are of reuniting with his family. So whether that is the press, whether that is individuals, whether that is organizations helping us, we very much appreciate the help, and we need all of the additional help that we can get in the many ways that we have discussed. Thank you again for joining us, and we will be seeing you again very soon.